When we'd finished filming the final scenes from the previous video, Class 50's The Final Years, both Paul Furtek, the producer, and myself heaved a sigh of relief. We felt that's it, there's no more filming to be done and no more shooting of the Class 50s. But we got to talking and thinking, what if? What if a film had been made about the final years of the Deltics? Can you imagine the interest that that would have generated? So we decided to make a programme about the final days of the Class 50s, between the summers of 1991 and 1992, and to take you behind the scenes of Lara Depot and tell the story of the men and the machines and a way of life that existed for nearly 20 years. This film is the result of that discussion. We hope you enjoy the programme. Welcome to the Inside Story and the Class 50 finale. Here at Lara Depot, we've been maintaining Class 50 locomotives for nearly 20 years, and during the late 1980s we've seen the gradual rundown of the fleet. This programme features the adventures of Valiant and Thunderer on their last rail tours, the sad story of withdrawn Class 50 locomotives in convoy to the scrap yards, the restoration of 50007 Sir Edward Elgar, the remarkable story of Glorious 5033, a locomotive which survived against all the odds, the various rail tours of 1991 and 92, and finally locomotives into preservation. But we start the programme with the final 12 Class 50 locomotives on their final months on the Waterloo-Exeter route. Sunday, May the 24th of 1991 will go down in history as the last day on which Class 50 traction was booked to work on the Waterloo-Exeter route. Network South East advertised the event, commemorative T-shirts were on sale to mark the occasion, and hundreds of people turned out to witness the end of an era. All last three remaining locos were diagrammed to work, but disaster struck on the previous day when 5033 suffered a flashover at Basingstoke, leaving 50007 and D400 paired to work two return trips between Exeter and Salisbury. It's 50007's only West of England turn since reinstatement. This is the first working of the day, approaching Buckholm Western Tunnel. This is the very last up working with booked Class 50 traction, the 1548 Exeter to Waterloo. Upon arrival at Salisbury, a commemorative headboard made by Tony Raphael was fitted. And here we are with driver Morton and Ride Inspector Chris Lunn assisting me fitting it to 50007. Here we are at Salisbury on a magnificent afternoon for the very last Class 50 passenger service. It's a piece of history in the making, and we've got 50007 and 5050 D400 to work the last revenue passenger service between Salisbury and Exeter. And it's a great credit to all the staff at Lara and all the train crews in the west of England who have managed to keep these machines still going after 25 years in service. Exeter, having successfully completed the final run in revenue service for the Class 50s. 50007 and D400 performed faultlessly on our final day in traffic. All that remains to be done now is to take the empty stop down to Lara. An activity that's been going on for the last 18 years with the Class 50s on the Waterloo-Exeter route is finally coming to a close. And With us, we have 5033, which unfortunately failed yesterday on the route with the age-old problem of flashover damage. However, all is not lost, and I'm hopeful that the skill of the staff at Lara will enable 5033 to return to duties with rail tours in the near future. .5015 Valiant and 5008 Thunderer will best be remembered as the two civil engineers at Celebrity Class 50s, which following repaints here at Lara in January '91 were used on a series of rail tours and special traffic duties. The locomotives are here awaiting disposal and are on the tender list for possible preservation. This part of the programme features the last months in traffic, and we start with 5015 at Taunton returning two diesel hydraulic locomotives to the West Somerset Railway. Valiant and Thunderer were used on several workings such as these during the summer of 1991, generally to convey preserved locomotives to and from open days, although in this case the Western and Heimlich were being returned to the West Somerset after being loaned to the Bodmin and Wentford Railway. Monday, September the 23rd, saw one of the most remarkable Class 50 workings of 1991, when Thunderer worked its only West of England turn, seen here arriving at Exeter Central. Thunderer was on her way back to Lara from the open day at Brighton and was used to power the 1315 Waterloo Exeter service from Salisbury due to a shortage of motive power on the route. 2 days later, number 8 was on the move again, this time conveying 3 vans from Lara to Bristol. October the 19th saw the duo's penultimate rail tour, the Hoover Hoop, which took 8 and 15 through the Cotswold Hills. Here we see one of the highlights of the tour, Valiant and Thunderer storming up Sapperton Bank. following month, the locos were back at Lara being prepared for their final working, the Valiant Thunderer Rail Tour. Every 55 running hours, each loco has to undergo an A examination. And here Mike Woodhouse can be seen carrying out an A exam on 50008. This exam is a safety-related exam where we check out the braking system, check that the headlights are working and that the windscreen wipers work. During its 23-year career on British Rail, this locomotive will have had well over 1,000 of these exams. Sadly, this was Thunderer's last. We also check the critical levels such as the lubricating oil and cooling system, and once we're satisfied with the static checks, the locomotive will be fired up and the exhaust will be checked. Both locos were given complete repaints, and as a final touch to complement her civil engineer's livery, we decided to get the correct colour for Valiant's nameplates. And here Roger Stevens is seen applying the final touches to paint the nameplates black. Finally, the locomotive operating arrangements had to be made, which included the provision of a third Class 50 for the tour. And for this I needed to lay out plans with my operating manager, Rod Fowkes.
So irrespective of what other diesel we use, 15 is the one to lead, which is the dual coloured one?
Yeah, that's right. We'll have, yeah. And that looked quite good going into Cornwall because it's got the ploughs on the front, right. It gives a bit of colour. And so they can get that one leading then, and we'll let number 8 do the leading on the way back up to Bristol.
Right.
And the only thing we've got to sort out is that if we try and get 50-30, because it depends on power that day, whether or not she can be spared. But we've always got 50-33 as a backup here.
Yeah.
We could use her if we had to, and make that the third engine.
But although it specifies D400, seeing as though that'll be in service on charters for the rest of 1991, this is the reason, presumably, they're looking for something different than 400.
Yeah, that's what people just said. I mean, there will be opportunities to use D400 in next year in '92, and they'd rather have another 50.
Good point. Okay.
So I'll tell you what we'll do is we'll try and earmark 50-30. With arrangements finalised, Valiant Thunder are ready for their last day in traffic, and we join the tour at Paynton's Goodrington sidings. However, disaster had struck, and the speedometer on 5015 had become defective, and it was necessary to reverse 50008 and 15 before their return journey to Newton Abbot. However, having overcome the problem for the journey from Paynton to Newton Abbot, the defective speedometer would then be leaving Newton Abbot, and 37142 came to the rescue and is seen here piloting the two Class 50s to Plymouth. With 50-30 being required for Waterloo exit duties, our contingency plan for the third Class 50 was put into action. And finally, the highlight of the tour, triple-headed Class 50s over the South Devon banks. Shortly before 8 p.m, the Valiant and Thunderer's careers draw to a close as they pull into Bristol for the very last time. They will run back light engine to Lara for storage and subsequent withdrawal. As locomotive withdrawals gathered pace through 1991, large numbers of scrap Class 50s began to accumulate at Lara, and some were stored in the adjacent ocean sidings. However, it became apparent that such was the interest that we had a severe trespass problem and people were crossing the main line to view the locomotives, so several were moved to the safety of Tavistock Yard. The lucky ones made it into preservation, and the remainder headed for the scrapyard. This was the scene in September 1991 as the 50s awaited their fate. The clear-out of Class 50s to the scrapyards began in January 1992, when Booths of Rotherham took delivery of 50001, 5040 and 5020. This was the first of 3 convoys to Booths. Ironically, it was an NSE 477 which took them on their final journey. The locomotives have been the subject of extensive component recovery, not only to keep the remaining Class 50s in service, but some parts had already been sold to preservation societies. The third convoy to Booths ran from Stratford in North London the following month, conveying 50s 23, 004 and 16, and are seen here passing through Cheshunt. An even more unusual sight was to follow during the summer of 1992 as MC Metals of Glasgow received 2 convoys, both of which were routed via the Settle Carlisle route. Here is the second working on its way north, conveying 50, 46, 37 and 18. Ironically, a few hours earlier, Transport Minister Roger Freeman had officially reopened Ribblehead Viaduct following its renovation, and these were the first locomotives to cross it. Sadly, within a week, 46 Ajax was just a memory. However, one Class 50 didn't even make it to the scrapyard. 5010 Monarch had been dumped at Lara for 4 years, and its condition prevented it being moved to a scrapyard, and so in June 1992 this loco became the only Class 50 to be cut up on site here at Lara. It's no secret that 50007 is our favourite Class 50 and the flagship of the Lara fleet. Since withdrawal in July of this year, the loco has been kept intact. An agreement has now been reached to restore the locomotive, and this is going to be handled as a project for our apprentices throughout the winter. And we shall take you through the scenes of the restoration, which will include the replacement of the power unit, a lifting over onto a new set of bogies, and then some fairly major attention to the bodywork. Lara is of course ideally suited to carry out this sort of work. We have had several years of expertise on maintaining the Class 50s, and this will probably be the last time that we shall actually do the lift out of a Class 50 power unit at Lara. So it's a bit of a sad occasion for us, and perhaps a little bit of history. And here we see the old power unit, which weighs just over 30 tonnes, being lifted out of 50007. The power unit had failed in July of 1991 with a defective main generator and was beyond economic repair. The whole assembly is lifted out and will be traversed across and secured onto a transporter wagon, and represents one of the heaviest lifts on a regional maintenance depot. You'll notice in these sequences that none of the staff are wearing safety headgear. During the ensuing 3 months of the restoration, we had reviewed our safety practices, and when you see the new unit being lowered into 50007, you'll notice that all the people are now wearing safety helmets. This part of the restoration had been undertaken by Lara's apprentices, and in these scenes you'll see some of our apprentices working alongside some of our more experienced fitting staff. The whole project for the restoration of 50007 was overseen by Depot Engineer Malcolm Wishart, seen here talking to Mike Woodhouse. 4 weeks later, here we are in the engine room of 50007. You can see that whilst the old power unit has been removed, we've taken the opportunity to give the engine room a thorough clean and repaint. We've also checked out all the power circuits and the main cables to ensure that the insulation is acceptable. And we're now ready to lift over the power unit from 5046 and lower it into 50007. The power unit from 5046 had been selected as it was the most recently overhauled power unit with the lowest engine hours.
Okay, Steve. Look at that. Smack on the button.
And here we are, Roger Hawkins, one of our fitter's assistants, guiding the 33-ton power unit carefully into position. Very difficult task to align the power unit correctly onto the engine bed plate. In February 1992, a bogie exchange was carried out between 5046, which is seen here in the background on number 1 road jacks, and 50007, positioned on number 3 road jacks. Both locomotives will be lifted simultaneously and the bogies exchanged. You can see why Mike Woodhouse described in his book Blood, Sweat and 50s. The bogies from 5046 were selected because they were recently overhauled and again had the lowest mileage of the withdrawn locomotives. And here the bogies from 5046 have been carefully positioned under 50007 before lowering down the body. Once the bogies have been positioned, the lowering sequence commences. We need to accurately place the bogies to ensure that the body marries up. Having successfully completed the bogie exchange, we continued with the body restoration. Extensive work was carried out particularly around the former route indicator boxes, where much corrosion existed and several sections had to be removed and replaced. And here you see two of our painters rubbing down the body in preparation for the undercoat. With bodywork repairs completed, number 7 was given a coat of grey primer. While the loco was in this condition, it made a test run to Newton Abbot on the 12th of March, reviving memories of Art Rawls' famous 1986 test run from Doncaster in the same colour. Here we see Sir Edward Elgar passing through Totnes. And here we are 3 months later, after a lot of hard work by all the staff at Lara. We're just applying the finishing touches and we're about to unveil 50007. Number 7's first outing following completion was on April the 8th, when it was paired with D400 on a test run to Bristol. Here the pair are seen with a rake of Mark III stock on the return working approaching Dainton Bank. An equally remarkable story is that of locomotive 5033, Old Smoky Joe as she's affectionately known. This locomotive had much luck, fate and good fortune to be one of the 3 remaining Class 50s in service. But we start this section of the programme in the autumn of 1991, when the locomotive was drawn from the West of England service to eke out her final days on Sandike duties from Lara. The Sandike vehicle was used to apply a special chemical to the railhead over the steep gradients on the South Devon banks to improve rail adhesion. These workings usually ran under the cover of darkness, although occasionally extra workings ran during the daylight, such as this one descending Dainton Bank. Having finished its Sandike duties in December, the loco returned to Lara for storage. With a heavily smoking power unit and the prospect of no further work, the locomotive underwent what is normally the last rites, the removal of its nameplates. common with other plates removed here at Lara, they are taken to our stores and placed in the secure storeroom before being sent to Collector's Corner for sale. Prices of Class 50 nameplates have far exceeded that of any other type of modern traction locomotive, with many fetching well in excess of £2,000. However, the plates were never to reach Collector's Corner. A shortage of motive power led to 5033 being reinstated to traffic in early January, and the loco was even called upon to work the Meldon-Hoover rail tour single-handed. Here Glorious is seen complete with refitted nameplates on a foggy morning at Effingham Junction. However, its heavily smoking power unit giving cause for concern, the problem being most evident when the locomotive was idling. The following month, 33 was returned to Lara, where authority was given to undertake engine repairs and investigate the cause of the excessive smoke. And this is the cause of the heavy exhaust. Numerous broken piston rings. New rings were fitted to the pistons, and the pistons, complete with connecting rods, were then replaced back into the engine. The repairs having been successfully completed, the body was however looking decidedly tatty, so we decided to clean the locomotive and give it a quick coat of paint. Its first run in its new coat of paint was on the 3rd of April, when number 33 was paired up with D400 for a test run to Exeter. It is seen here passing Tavistock Yard with a rake of travelling post office vehicles. The test run proved a success, and the following day Glorious was back on rail tour duties, this time heading along the valleys of South Wales with D400 on Pathfinder Tour's Hoovering Druid. The pair are seen here winding their way up the Garrie Valley. As we saw earlier in the programme, Glorious failed to make the final day of Waterloo-Exeter running due to a flashover at Basingstoke on the 23rd of May. The locomotive then returned to Lara for repairs. We now join electricians Dickie Dorr and Peter Armstrong as they undertake an assessment of the damage to the traction motors and main generator.
What have we got today? Oh yes. Well, this apparently is flashed over at Basingstoke, and we've got to have a look at it and see what the extent of the damage is.
Right, okay.
We're at number 2N, so we'll start on number 6 traction motor to begin with.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
so let's go. Brushes are okay, yes.
Okay, then.
Right. The comb could do with a bit of a clean.
Yeah.
Yes, and the insulators and the V-ring, they are rather dirty, yes. Right. Let's have a look at number 3 traction motor, Pete, and see what that one looks like. See how bad it is. Right. Anything in the cover? No, no debris, broken brushes, pigtails, nothing at all. Good sign that. Right. Right, now then. Right, let's have a look. Oh, it's quite black in here. It has flashed over, look. The V-ring is pretty bad. Can you see it from your side with a torch?
Yeah.
How is it? Yeah, it's pretty bad, isn't it? There you are, look, it's flashed over. That's sheerly electrical flashovers cause the blackness on that, look.
Yeah.
It's like soot, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's probably like a Catherine wheel when they flash over. I've never actually been able to see it, but there you are. So this will clean up. The V-ring needs a good clean, as I say, and there's a repair on the other side to do.
Yeah.
So this one is serviceable after it's had a good clean.
Right.
Let's have a look at number 1 traction motor again.
Right.
There now, look. Having looked at the others, and they were very, very black, that's what they should look like when we've finished. The insulators have been cleaned. The V-ring is perfect. Look, the brushes are all in tip-top condition. The commutator's good. Not a bad motor at all, really, and it's now fit for service. So, well, hopefully the others will look like this when we finish.
Now it's into the engine room to look at the main generator.
Yeah, okay.
Right. Right. Yes. Oh yes, he's certainly flashed over this one. Not terribly bad, though. I've seen worse. There you'll see that the V-ring is really black, and that's where the flashover has affected that part. It's unusual, really, because the flashover isn't all the way round, it's in patches. So as you can imagine, when it does flash over, it's dancing around the surface of this V-ring. This is the control cubicle and contains the contactors that allows the power to go down to the motors. This connects the generator to the traction motors. And these open and shut, they are basically switches, and as a result they get sometimes pretty badly burned. It depends on how the locomotive is often driven. The contacts will have to be dressed and cleaned. Otherwise, if they fray up like they appear now, they will weld together, and that obviously causes a failure.
Repairs were subsequently completed, and on the 6th of July, Glorious was sent on a test run to Bristol. We shall now board 5033 to see how the locomotive performs.
My name is Steve Tyler. I'm the driver leader from Plymouth. I'm here to ride on the test run from Lara to Bristol, making sure that Class 50-50-33 performs as it should do, being as it had a flashover recently. The load we have this morning is 7 vehicles for 264 tonnes. As you can see, the locomotive has been restricted to 75 miles an hour. This is to try and alleviate the problems with flashover. In the back cab we have 2 technical chaps riding with us to also assist and help in any problems that may arise. My duties primarily are to monitor the driver and to make sure that he does his duties correctly. We are now on the approach to Dainton Bank, with the locomotive working at maximum power. This is one of the steepest banks in the West Country. When we reach the summit of the bank, there's a tunnel, and as we emerge from the tunnel, the driver will shut off power for the loco to coast down the bank towards Newton Abbot. successfully completed the climb over the Devon banks, we are now approaching Teignmouth and one of the most scenic parts of the route. The railway from Teignmouth runs right along the sea coast as far as Dawlish, where it then sweeps inland towards Exeter.
The load on this test run was unusual for a Class 50. It was conveying HST stock on an HST power car to Bristol St Philip's Marsh. And 2 hours later, 5033 is on its way back with yet another unusual load, 2 HST power cars back to back.
Service to Painter. Next train to arrive at platform 1. We apologise for any inconvenience caused by this delay.
5033 was again put through its paces over the stiff gradients of the South Devon banks before returning back to Lara to complete a round trip of 250 miles.
Well, we've now arrived back on Lara Depot after a very successful test run to Bristol and back. The loco performed faultlessly and is now ready for traffic.
In view of the popularity of the class, it is no surprise that the locos were in heavy demand for rail tours. This section of the programme features every single 50 rail tour run between August 91 and July 92, together with some specials utilising Class 50 traction. We start with the NSE excursion to Colchester Open Day and 5017 storming up Bethnal Green Bank. Our final sequence in this section ends with 50007 and D400 participating in the Taunton 150 cavalcade.
Only one of those left now. And we have the two Class 50s moving up here to sit in line with the highway.
And there's the former Hercules, 50007 Sir Edward Elgar, in Great Western 150 livery, making its way back, ready for this afternoon's cavalcade. English Electric produced in the later 60s for West Coast mainline work, then on to the Western region, the Paddington line and the Waterloo line, doing a good job more recently on the former Southern line, now Network South East London, Waterloo and Exeter. 400 is coming as well. These Class 50s having a following, and a lot, quite a number already bought into preservation. And although these locomotives aren't in regular service anymore, they will certainly survive. Rail Magazine sponsored the repainting of D400 into its original livery. It cost my Thoroughbere School Train Club a fiver. I don't know which bit of paint is ours, but we feel as though we own a bit of it. So these locomotives on restricted speed now, I think they're allowed a mere 70. But they've acquitted themselves well in time, and we'll shortly be seeing 7017 running around its train as well.
By August 92, no less than 11 Class 50s had entered into preservation. But with several locos still on BR's books, no doubt more will follow. 5049 Defiance, purchased by the Class 50 Society, is just one preserved example. In this final part of the programme, we see highlights from the world of Class 50 preservation. Several special runs were made from Lara to deliver locomotives to their new homes, and here we see 5027 Lion en route to the Mid-Hants. Later the same day, 5031 Hood was on its way to Hastings and is seen here negotiating the tight curve at Virginia Water Station. The move which attracted the most publicity occurred in January 92, when 5019 Ramillies was moved by road from Exeter to Tunbridge Wells. This movement made national headlines when the road transporter failed and left the locomotive stranded in Exeter town centre. Here we see the locomotive on the move on the 13th of January on the A423, about to negotiate Birchard's Green roundabout near Maidenhead. The movement provided plenty of new route for the class, no more so than the notoriously busy M25, where Ramillies is seen near Uxbridge. Having taken delivery of their locomotives, the new owners set about the task of returning them to running order. The mechanical condition of each locomotive varied greatly, as the 50 Fund discovered with their 3 Class 50 locos, based at St Leonard's Depot in Hastings. Chairman Jonathan Dunster explains.
Behind me in the background here we have 5031, which was the last of the 350s to arrive here in March this year from Lara. We received it in working order, and after a bit of remedial attention we've used it on the Severn Valley Gala weekend, where it performed for 4 days without any major faults whatsoever. And the loco has already made a number of open bay appearances and will hopefully be making a few more towards the end of this year. And here we have 5035, which was the first of the 350s to arrive here, and also the first 50 to be preserved, which we received at Old Oak Common Open Day last year from Chris Green. Since arriving at St Leonard's, we've concentrated on overhaul of the power unit and a rewire of this cab. And we do hope to start the locomotive up for the first time in our ownership in a couple of weeks' time towards the beginning of August. Moving across here to 5044, which was the second 50 purchased by the 50 Fund. This loco arrived here in the end of January, and since arriving here we've really concentrated on the bodywork of this loco more than anything else, as it's been gradually returned to the pre-refurbished condition with removal of headlights and restoration of glass headcoat panels. This loco hopefully will be cosmetically restored for next year's open day season, and a mechanical overhaul will take place hopefully once the overhaul of 5035 is completed in a year to 18 months' time.
Hood's first revenue-earning runs took place on the Severn Valley Railway on the 8th of May as part of their spring diesel gala weekend. The Devon Diesel Society acquired 50,002 Superb for use on the Pateman and Dartmouth Railway. The Society wasted no time in returning the locomotive to its original blue livery. third Class 50 to work in preservation was 5027 Lion, which is seen here on its inaugural run over the Mid-Hants line on the 17th of May. Our programme ends returning to St Leonard's Depot in Hastings for a birthday celebration. On Monday, August the 3rd, 5035 Ark Royal was to be fired up for the first time in preservation. The date had a dual historical importance. It was withdrawn exactly 2 years ago to the day, and incredibly, it was also her 24th birthday. This is the first attempt at firing her up. Three attempts later, Ark Royal was to burst into life again in spectacular fashion. This is how it happened. As you can see, a lot has happened in the last 12 months. When we started filming this programme, 50007 was a derelict hulk, and the remaining Class 50s were to be withdrawn by December 1991. As we bring the programme to a close, 11 Class 50s are in preservation, and 3 Class 50s remain for rail tour use. These 3 locomotives will only remain with Network South East if they're a commercial success. By purchasing this video, you have helped to keep the locomotives in service. We hope you enjoyed the programme, and with your support, no doubt the Class 50 story will continue.